Tonight, you're mine.
Oh, sure.
Completely.
The auction hall smelled like old money and desperation. Isabella Kingsley stood backstage, her hands trembling as she signed the contract that would sell the one thing she swore she'd never commodify. $500,000. Enough to save her mother's life. Enough to destroy her own. The Korean CEO who bought her virginity sat in the front row, his dark eyes fixed on her like she was already his. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't know that in 6 weeks, she'd be in his bed again, crying his name like a prayer. She didn't know that the moment their eyes met, something ancient and terrifying would crack open inside his chest, something that would make him hunt her down like a man possessed when she tried to disappear. Welcome to K Fairy Tales Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Isabella's knees buckled as she walked off the stage. The woman in red, the one who'd organized this nightmare, caught her elbow with manicured fingers. Room 1207, penthouse level, he's waiting. Her voice was clinical, businesslike, as if she hadn't just facilitated the sale of a human being's innocence. Isabella wanted to vomit. She wanted to run. She wanted to wake up in her cramped apartment and discover this was all a fever dream brought on by 72 sleepless hours at her mother's hospital bedside. But the check in her purse was real. The tumor pressing against her mother's brain was real. The 30-day countdown until the insurance company stopped covering treatment was real. She stepped into the elevator. Her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a stranger. The black dress they'd given her clung to curves she usually hid beneath oversized scrubs from her nursing program. Her natural hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, fell in soft curls around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. She looked expensive. She looked like someone who belonged in a world where people bought and sold each other in 5-star hotels. The elevator climbed. Her heart rate climbed with it. 12th floor. The doors opened onto a private hallway with only one entrance. The double doors at the end were already open. Warm light spilled out. Classical music played softly. Isabella forced her feet to move. She stepped inside. The penthouse was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooked the Seoul skyline. Modern art that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical bills decorated the walls. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket, untouched. And standing by the window, his back to her, was the man who'd paid $500,000 for one night with a 23-year-old nursing student he'd never met. He turned. Isabella's breath stopped. He was younger than she'd expected. Early 30s, maybe, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that was tailored so precisely it looked like a weapon. But it was his face that made her forget how to breathe. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they looked black in the low light. He was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like looking directly at something that could blind you. Isabella Kingsley. His voice was deep, accented, controlled. He said her name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. You're more beautiful than your photograph suggested. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her body had gone into some kind of shock. He crossed the room toward her. Each step was measured, predatory. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her head spin. Do you know who I am? She shook her head. Kang Min-ho, CEO of Kang Industries. He said it without arrogance, just fact. Then his eyes changed, something flickering in their depths that looked almost like confusion. I need you to understand something before we begin. I don't do this. I don't buy women. I don't attend auctions. I've never paid for anything I couldn't acquire through negotiation or strategy. Then why am I here? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Because I saw your photograph and lost my mind. He said it quietly, like he was admitting a weakness. I've built an empire on control and logic. I don't make impulsive decisions. But I looked at your picture and I knew I had to have you. Consequences be damned. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, barely touching, and electricity shot down her spine. Tell me you feel it too. This pull. This impossibility. Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. She did feel it. This magnetic attraction to a stranger who'd essentially purchased her like an object. She should hate him. She should be disgusted. Instead, her body was leaning toward him like gravity had shifted. I feel it, she whispered. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, he just looked at her, his eyes searching hers. Then he stepped closer, eliminating the space between them, and his hand slid into her hair. "I'm going to kiss you now. If you want me to stop, say so." She didn't say anything. His mouth came down on hers, and the world exploded. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Isabella gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, his other hand gripping her waist, pulling her flush against him. She could feel every hard plane of his body, the tension in his muscles, the barely leashed control threatening to snap. Her hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer, needing more of this impossible heat. He tasted like whiskey and danger. His kiss was demanding, possessive, claiming her mouth like he owned it. Maybe he did. He'd paid for this, paid for her. The thought should have been sobering. Instead, it sent a dark thrill through her body. Minho broke the kiss, his breathing harsh. "Bedroom, now!" It wasn't a question. He lifted her, his strength effortless, and she wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively. He carried her through the penthouse, his mouth finding her neck, teeth grazing her pulse point in a way that made her whimper. He laid her on silk sheets that felt like water against her skin. The bedroom was dimly lit, intimate. He stood over her for a moment, his eyes raking over her body with such intensity she felt it like a physical touch. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice rough. "Tonight, you're mine, completely. I'm going to learn every sound you make, every place that makes you shiver, every limit you have. And tomorrow morning, you walk away with your money and we never see each other again. That's the deal." Something in Isabella's chest twisted at those words. Never see each other again. This was a transaction, one night, that was all. "I understand," she said. "Good." He shrugged out of his jacket, loosened his tie. "Then let's not waste time." What happened next was a blur of desperate hands and shed clothing and barriers crumbling. He undressed her slowly despite his words, his hands reverent as they revealed skin. When she was finally bare beneath him, he paused, his eyes dark with hunger. "You're perfect," he murmured. "Absolutely perfect." Then his mouth was on her skin, kissing and tasting and driving her out of her mind. He took his time, learning her body like he'd promised, discovering what made her gasp and arch and beg. By the time he finally positioned himself between her thighs, Isabella was trembling with need. "This will hurt," he warned, his voice strained. "I'll go slow." She nodded, bracing herself. When he pushed into her, there was pain, sharp and stealing her breath. He stilled immediately, giving her time to adjust, his forehead pressed against hers. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe." She did, and slowly the pain faded into something else. Fullness, connection, heat building low in her belly. She shifted her hips experimentally and he groaned, the sound raw. "Move," she whispered. "Please move." He did, slow at first, then deeper, harder, finding a rhythm that made stars burst behind her eyelids. Isabella clung to him as he took her apart piece by piece, his mouth swallowing her cries, his hands everywhere. When she shattered, it was with his name on her lips, and he followed her over the edge moments later, burying his face in her neck as he came undone. The silence afterward was heavy. Minho rolled onto his back, his chest heaving, one arm thrown over his eyes. Isabella lay beside him, her body still trembling with aftershocks, trying to process what had just happened. She'd just lost her virginity to a stranger, a beautiful, intense stranger who'd paid $500,000 for the privilege. It should feel wrong, dirty. Instead, she felt powerful, desired, alive in a way she'd never experienced. "Stay tonight," Minho said quietly, his arm still covering his eyes. "Sleep here, leave in the morning." "Okay." They didn't sleep, not right away. They talked instead, trading pieces of themselves in the dark. He told her about building an empire before 30, about the pressure and the loneliness. She told him about her mother's illness, about dropping out of college to work 3 jobs, about the desperation that had driven her to that auction. "I'm sorry," he said, "that you were put in a position where this was your only option." "I'm not." She turned her head to look at him. "Not anymore. You gave me a way to save her. I'll never regret that." His eyes found hers in the darkness. Something passed between them, something neither could name. Then he was kissing her again, and they made love a second time, slower and deeper, until they both fell asleep tangled together. Isabella woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Minho was already awake, dressed in fresh clothes, standing by the window with a coffee cup in his hand. He looked every inch the powerful CEO again, all traces of last night's vulnerability gone. "There's breakfast on the table," he said without turning, "and an envelope with your payment, additional compensation for your time." The dismissal in his tone stung more than it should. Isabella sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "Right, of course." She dressed quickly, her body aching in unfamiliar places. The envelope sat on the marble counter, thick with cash. She picked it up, felt its weight. This was it. This was what she'd sold herself for, her mother's life, purchased with one night in a stranger's bed. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Minho finally turned to look at her. His expression was carefully blank. "Goodbye, Isabella." She left without another word. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Isabella focused on her mother, who was responding well to the new treatment the money had afforded. Grace asked where the money came from, and Isabella lied, said a donor had come through, someone who'd heard about their situation. Grace was too grateful to question it deeply. But Isabella couldn't stop thinking about him, about Minho, about the way he'd touched her, looked at her, made her feel like she was the center of the universe for those few hours. She told herself it was just the intensity of the experience, the forbidden nature of it. It would fade. It didn't fade. She dreamed about him, woke up aching for hands that weren't there, caught herself looking for his face in crowds even though she was in a completely different part of the city. It was insane. She'd spent one night with a man, one night that was purchased, transactional, meaningless. So why did it feel like she'd left a piece of herself in that penthouse? 3 weeks after the auction, Isabella was leaving her shift at the hospital where she volunteered when a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The back window rolled down. Minho sat inside, looking at her with those dark, intense eyes. Her heart stopped. "Get in the car, Isabella." It wasn't a request. She should refuse, should turn around and walk away. Instead, she found herself opening the door and sliding into the leather interior. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Minho didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then, "I can't stop thinking about you." Isabella's breath caught. "What?" "I've tried. God knows I've tried. I've buried myself in work, traveled to 3 different countries on business, slept with someone else to prove to myself it was just physical." His jaw tightened. "Nothing works. You're in my head, Isabella, under my skin. I can't focus, can't sleep, can't function like a normal human being because all I can think about is you." "Minho, I want to make you an offer." He pulled out a document, set it on the seat between them. "A contract, non-negotiable terms, you come when I call, day or night, whenever I need you. In exchange, I pay you $50,000 a month, more than enough to cover your mother's treatment and your living expenses. You finish your degree, you live your life, but when I call, you come to me." Isabella stared at the document, at him. "You want to, what? Keep me as your personal call girl?" "I want you in my bed whenever I need you there. I want access to you without the complication of dating or relationship expectations." His eyes burned into hers. "I'm not offering you romance, Isabella. I'm offering you financial security in exchange for your body. It's honest. It's clean. And based on what happened between us 3 weeks ago, it's something we both want." She should be insulted, should throw the contract in his face and storm out. But her body was already responding to his proximity, heat pooling low in her belly, her skin remembering exactly how his hands felt. "How long?" she asked. 6 months, renewable if we both agree." "And if I say no?" "Then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what if." His hand reached out, cupped her face. "But you're not going to say no, are you? Because you've been thinking about me too. You've been remembering what it felt like when I was inside you. You want this as much as I do." He was right. God help her, he was right. "I need to think about it." "You have 24 hours. He handed her a pen, then a business card with a phone number. "Call this number when you've decided, but Isabella," his thumb traced her bottom lip, "we both know what your answer is going to be." The car stopped. They were back at her apartment building. Minho's driver opened her door. Isabella took the contract and the card, her hands shaking slightly. One more thing, Minho said as she started to leave. When you're with me, you're only with me. No other men. That's non-negotiable. That works both ways, she heard herself say. His smile was sharp. Deal. Isabella spent the next 24 hours in agony. She read the contract a dozen times. It was thorough, professional, protecting both of them legally. $50,000 a month, 6 months. Come when called, sexual exclusivity, no promises beyond the physical. It was insane, degrading, everything she'd sworn she'd never do. It was also the answer to every financial problem she had. Her mother's treatment, her tuition, a chance to finish her degree without working 3 jobs, and if she was honest with herself, she wanted him, wanted to feel that intensity again, wanted to explore whatever this magnetic pull was between them. She called the number. Yes or no, Isabella? Minho's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. Yes. Be at the penthouse in 1 hour. He hung up. Isabella showered, shaved, put on the nicest underwear she owned beneath jeans and a simple top. Her hands trembled as she applied minimal makeup. This was really happening. She was really doing this. The penthouse looked exactly as she remembered. Minho was waiting, dressed in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dress pants, barefoot. He looked less controlled than last time, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. You came, he said. Did you doubt I would? Yes, he crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands framing her face. I've been going insane for 3 weeks wondering if I'd ever touch you again. Then his mouth was on hers, and it was just as explosive as the first time. He kissed her like he was trying to consume her, his hands already working at her clothes. Isabella matched his desperation, tugging at his shirt, needing skin. They barely made it to the couch. Minho sat down and pulled her onto his lap, her thighs straddling his hips. She could feel how hard he was through their clothes. I need you now, he growled against her mouth. Can't wait. Then don't. He made quick work of their remaining clothes, and then he was lifting her, positioning her, and she was sinking down onto him with a gasp. No pain this time, just fullness and heat and perfect friction. Minho's hands gripped her hips, guiding her movements, his eyes locked on hers. You feel like heaven, he said roughly. Better than I remembered, better than my fantasies. Isabella rode him, her hands braced on his shoulders, her head falling back as pleasure built. He leaned forward, his mouth finding her breast, and she cried out. It was too much, too intense. She was going to shatter. That's it, Minho urged, his voice strained. Let go, let me see you fall apart. She did. She came with his name on her lips, her body clenching around him, and he followed her over with a guttural groan, his face buried in her neck. They stayed like that for long minutes, breathing hard, their bodies still joined. Then Minho lifted her carefully, carried her to the bedroom, and they made love again. Slower this time. He explored every inch of her body, learning her all over again, finding new places that made her gasp and moan. Afterward, lying in tangled sheets, Minho traced lazy patterns on her hip. This is going to be good, he said quietly. This arrangement. Isabella wanted to agree, but something in her chest ached at the word, arrangement, as if what they'd just shared was anything less than earth-shattering. What are the rules? She asked, besides coming when called in exclusivity. Discretion, no one can know about this. It would complicate my business dealings if word got out. He paused. And no emotions, this is physical. We both need to remember that. No emotions. Right. As if her heart wasn't already doing dangerous things every time he looked at her. Understood, she lied. Over the next 3 weeks, Minho called her 6 times. Each encounter was the same pattern. He'd text a time and place. She'd show up. They'd fall into bed together with desperate urgency. Afterward, they'd talk for hours, sharing pieces of themselves before she'd leave in the early morning hours. Isabella told herself she could handle it, that she could separate the physical from the emotional. But it was getting harder, because Minho wasn't just good in bed. He was funny when he let his guard down. He was brilliant and driven and surprisingly vulnerable when talking about the pressure he was under. He remembered details about her life, asked about her mother's treatment, sent flowers to her apartment for no reason. It felt like more than just sex. It felt like the beginning of something real. The fourth week, everything changed. Minho called her to the penthouse on a Friday night. When she arrived, he was standing by the window, tension radiating from his body. He didn't greet her with a kiss like usual, just stared out at the city. Minho, what's wrong? I have to go to New York, business crisis. I'll be gone 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Isabella's stomach dropped. Okay. He turned to look at her finally. His expression was tortured. I don't want to go. I want to cancel the entire trip and keep you in my bed for the next month. Then why don't you? Because I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and 300 people's livelihoods depend on me fixing this. He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. But I'm going to miss you. And I hate that I'm going to miss you because this was supposed to be just physical and somehow you've become necessary. Isabella's heart raced. Minho. Don't, he kissed her hard. Don't say anything, let's just have tonight. They made love with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Minho worshipped every inch of her body, murmuring things in Korean she didn't understand, holding her like he was afraid she'd disappear. When they finally collapsed together, exhausted, he pulled her against his chest and held her tight. When I get back, he said quietly, we need to talk about what this is becoming. Isabella's pulse jumped. What do you mean? You know what I mean. His hand stroked her hair. This stopped being just physical somewhere along the way, at least for me. Hope bloomed in her chest, dangerous and bright. For me too. He kissed her forehead. Then we'll figure it out when I get back, I promise. She fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer and more content than she had in years. The next morning, Minho was gone before she woke up. A note on the pillow said simply, 3 weeks, wait for me. She would, of course she would. But as Isabella got dressed and prepared to leave, she noticed something on the penthouse coffee table she hadn't seen before. A business magazine, open to an article about Kang Industries. And prominently featured in one of the photos was Minho at a charity gala, a beautiful Korean woman on his arm. The caption read, CEO Kang Minho with fiancé Park Jae-yeon, daughter of Park Industries chairman. Fiancé. The world tilted. Isabella grabbed the magazine with shaking hands, read the article. It was dated 2 months ago, before she'd ever met Minho, before the auction. The article talked about a merger between Kang Industries and Park Industries to be sealed with a marriage between their heirs. He had a fiancée. The entire time he'd been with her, making promises, talking about figuring out what they were becoming, he'd been engaged to someone else. Isabella's stomach lurched. She barely made it to the bathroom before she vomited. When she could breathe again, she called a car service, left the penthouse, and blocked Minho's number. She'd been such a fool. Of course this was just physical for him. Of course there was no future. Men like Kang Minho didn't fall in love with poor nursing students they met at Virginity auctions. They married appropriate women from appropriate families and kept women like Isabella as dirty secrets. Well, she was done being anyone's secret. Her phone buzzed all day with calls from unknown numbers. She ignored them all. A courier showed up at her apartment with a letter. She sent him away. By evening, she was exhausted and raw and determined to forget Kang Minho ever existed. Then her mother called from the hospital. Baby girl, the strangest thing just happened. A man came by, said he was from a charitable foundation. He's offering to cover all my medical expenses indefinitely. Every treatment, every medication, everything. Grace sounded confused but hopeful. Do you know anything about this? Isabella closed her eyes. Minho. Even now, even after she'd run, he was taking care of her mother, making sure she had what she needed. I don't know anything about it, Mama, she lied. But if it's legitimate, you should accept it. The paperwork looks real, I already signed. Grace paused. Are you okay? You sound upset. I'm fine, just tired. I'll come visit tomorrow. She hung up and let herself cry. Because part of her hated Minho for lying, for making her fall for him when he belonged to someone else. But part of her would always love him for this. For making sure her mother was taken care of even after Isabella had disappeared from his life. 2 days later, Isabella was walking home from her volunteer shift when the black Mercedes appeared again. This time, when the window rolled down, Minho looked furious. Get in the car, now. No. He got out, stalked toward her. People on the street stared, but he didn't seem to care. You blocked my number. You've been ignoring my messages. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I found out about your fiancé, Minho. The contract's void. We're done. His jaw tightened. Jaeyeon is a business arrangement, not a real engagement. Does she know that? It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it or leave me alone. Isabella turned to walk away. Minho grabbed her wrist, gentle but firm. Please, just give me 10 minutes to explain. The desperation in his voice stopped her. Against her better judgment, she got in the car. Minho slid in beside her, told the driver to circle the block. Then he turned to her, his expression raw. The engagement to Jaeyeon was arranged by our fathers before they died. A merger of families and companies. I've been trying to break it for years, but it's legally complicated. Millions of dollars in contracts, shareholder agreements, board expectations. He took her hands. But I don't love her. I've never even kissed her. She's practically a stranger. She knows this marriage is purely business. That doesn't make it better, Minho. You should have told me. You're right, I should have, but I was terrified that if you knew, you'd run, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. His hands tightened on hers. These last 2 days have been hell. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except finding you and making this right. How can you make it right? You're engaged to someone else. I'm ending it. I met with the lawyers yesterday. I'm dissolving the engagement. Consequences be damned. The board will fight me. Jaeyeon's family will sue. I'll probably lose a significant portion of the company's value, but I don't care. He lifted her hands to his lips. Because I'm in love with you, Isabella, completely, irrevocably in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Isabella's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. You're in love with me, she repeated numbly. So much it terrifies me. I was supposed to keep this physical, keep my distance, protect myself, but somewhere between the first night and now, you became everything. He cupped her face. I love you, and I know it's fast and I know I've screwed this up, but I'm asking you to give me another chance. Let me prove I'm choosing you. Let me show you this is real. Isabella wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into his arms and let him convince her with kisses and promises, but fear held her back. How do I know you won't change your mind? That when the reality of what you're giving up hits, you won't resent me. Because you're worth more than all of it. His forehead pressed against hers. The company, the merger, the board's approval, none of it means anything if I lose you. I'd burn it all down to keep you, Isabella. I'd give up everything. A tear slid down her cheek. I love you too. I've been trying not to, trying to keep this just physical like you wanted, but I can't. I'm in love with you and it's terrifying because we barely know each other and this is moving so fast and... He kissed her, swallowing the rest of her words. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating without her. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he smiled against her lips. Then we figure it out together. No more secrets, no more contracts, just us building something real. What about your fiancé? I'm meeting with her and her family tomorrow, ending it officially. There will be fallout, but I don't care. His thumb wiped away her tears. I want you, Isabella, only you, for as long as you'll have me. She kissed him again, pouring 3 weeks of longing and fear and love into the contact. Minho responded with equal intensity, his hands in her hair, pulling her as close as the car's interior would allow. When they finally came up for air, Isabella laughed breathlessly. This is insane. We're insane. Completely. He grinned, looking younger and lighter than she'd ever seen him. But I wouldn't have it any other way. The car pulled up to her apartment. Minho walked her to her door like a gentleman, despite everything they'd just confessed. Tomorrow, he said, kissing her forehead. After I handle the Jaeyeon situation, I'm taking you to dinner. A real date. No contracts, no transactions, just us. I'd like that. Wear something beautiful. I want to show off the woman I'm in love with. Isabella floated into her apartment, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She pulled out her phone, unblocked Minho's number, and sent him a text. I love you. His response was immediate. I love you more. Sleep well, beautiful. Tomorrow, everything changes. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of the impossible future that suddenly felt within reach. Isabella woke to 17 missed calls and a text that made her blood run cold. The text was from an unknown number. Stay away from Kang Min-ho. This is your only warning. Her hands shook as she screenshot the message. Before she could process what it meant, her phone rang. Min-ho's name flashed on the screen. Did you get a threatening text? His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Yes, just now. Don't leave your apartment. I'm sending security. She heard him barking orders to someone in the background. Jaeyoon's family knows about you. I don't know how, but they know. And they're not taking the dissolution well. Fear prickled down Isabella's spine. Min-ho, maybe we should slow down, if this is causing problems. No, his voice was steel. Absolutely not. They're trying to scare you away and it's not going to work. I'm handling this. Just stay inside until my security team arrives. Please, Isabella. 20 minutes later, 2 men in dark suits were stationed outside her apartment building. Min-ho called again to confirm they were in place, his voice still edged with anger. I'm meeting with the Park family in an hour. This ends today. He paused. I'm sorry you're being dragged into this. I knew what I was signing up for when I fell in love with you. Did you? Because I'm not sure I did. His voice softened. I didn't know loving someone could make me this violent. The thought of anyone threatening you makes me want to burn the world down. Don't burn anything down yet. Just end the engagement and come back to me. Always, he hung up. Isabella tried to distract herself with studying, but her mind kept wandering to Min-ho in some conference room with his ex-fiancé and her powerful family. What was he saying? Were they fighting? Was he having second thoughts about giving up a strategic merger for a woman he'd known for barely 2 months? Her phone buzzed, a photo message from another unknown number. The image showed Min-ho and Jaeyoon at what looked like a charity gala, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling for the camera. The caption read, "He'll never choose you over his legacy." Isabella's stomach twisted. She knew the photo was old, probably from before they'd even met, but doubt crept in anyway. Min-ho was giving up so much for her. What if he woke up one day and resented her for it? What if his feelings were just infatuation that would fade once reality set in? Another text, you're a distraction, a phase, women like you don't end up with men like him. She blocked the number. Then another message came from a different number, and another. Someone was orchestrating a campaign to break her down, and it was working. By the time Min-ho called 3 hours later, Isabella was a wreck. It's done, he said, exhaustion clear in his voice. The engagement is officially dissolved. Jaeyoon's family is threatening to sue, pull their investments, tank our stock price. The board is calling an emergency meeting. But it's over. I'm free. Min-ho, maybe. Don't, he cut her off. Whatever those messages said, whatever doubts they planted, don't let them win. I made my choice. I chose you. Nothing is going to change that. I'm scared, she admitted. This is too much too fast. People are threatening me. Your company is at risk. What if? Come to the penthouse. Right now. Let me see you, hold you, remind you why we're doing this. His voice dropped. Please, Isabella, I need you. She went. The security team drove her in an unmarked car, taking a route designed to avoid any media that might be lurking. When she arrived at the penthouse, Min-ho was waiting by the elevator, still in his suit from the meeting, his tie loosened, exhaustion and relief warring in his expression. He pulled her into his arms the moment she stepped out, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. You're here. You came. Of course I came. He kissed her, deep and desperate, then pulled back to look at her face. They got to you. I can see it. What did they say? Isabella showed him her phone, the threatening messages, the photos. Min-ho's expression went deadly. I'm going to destroy them, he said quietly. Every single person who thought they could intimidate you. Don't. It'll just make things worse. Then what do you want me to do? Let them harass you, scare you away from me. His hands framed her face. Tell me how to fix this. Just love me. That's all I need. Something in his expression cracked. He kissed her again, softer this time, and led her to the bedroom. They made love slowly, tenderly, Min-ho worshipping every inch of her body like he was trying to memorize her. When they finally collapsed together, he pulled her against his chest and held her tight. I have to tell you something, he said quietly. The board meeting is tomorrow. They're going to try to force me out as CEO. Claim I'm making emotional decisions that are damaging the company. They might succeed. Isabella's heart stopped. What? Ending the park engagement cost us their investment portfolio. That's $3 billion in backing. The stock dropped 8% today. Shareholders are panicking. He stroked her hair. I knew this would happen. I did it anyway. But I need you to understand what you're getting into. Dating me right now means being blamed for a corporate crisis. It means media scrutiny, public hatred, people calling you a gold digger and worse. It means watching me potentially lose everything I've built. Then maybe we should. No. He rolled her onto her back, hovering over her, his eyes intense. Don't even think about leaving me to make this easier. I won't let you sacrifice yourself to save my company. We face this together or not at all. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. You are everything. He kissed her forehead. The company, the CEO title, the wealth, none of it matters if I lose you. I'd rather be broke and in love than rich and empty. Tears slid down Isabella's temples. How did this happen? How did we get here so fast? I don't know, but I'm not questioning it anymore. He settled beside her, pulling her into his arms. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll handle it together. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, finding comfort in the eye of the storm. The board meeting was a massacre. Isabella wasn't there, but Minho called her afterward, his voice carefully controlled. They voted me out, effective immediately. I'm no longer CEO of Kang Industries. The words hit her like a physical blow. Oh my God, Minho, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. It's theirs for being short-sighted cowards who care more about quarterly earnings than integrity. He paused. I'm coming over. I need to see you. When he arrived at her tiny apartment, he looked exhausted but strangely lighter. He pulled her into his arms and just held her for a long moment. Talk to me, Isabella said. Tell me what you're feeling. Relief, he laughed, the sound bitter. I spent 10 years building that company, sacrificing everything for it, and the moment I choose something for myself, they throw me out. And all I feel is relief that I don't have to pretend anymore. Pretend what? That I care about their approval, that their opinions matter, that anything matters more than you. He cupped her face. I'm free, Isabella. For the first time in my adult life, I'm actually free. No board meetings, no shareholder expectations, no fiancé I never wanted, just me and the woman I love. But your company is contractually obligated to buy me out. I'll walk away with more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I'll be fine. We'll be fine. He kissed her softly. Actually, I have a proposition for you. Another contract. She tried to smile. A life with me. No more arrangements or negotiations. Just us, figuring out what we want to do with the rest of our lives. He pulled back to look at her. I want to travel, see the world outside of conference rooms and 5-star hotels. I want to wake up next to you every morning without checking my phone for market reports. I want to be a normal person for once in my life. Isabella's heart swelled. That sounds perfect, but I have school, my mother. Finish your degree online. Your mother has full medical coverage forever, I made sure of that. And when she's well enough, we'll bring her with us. Show her Paris, Tokyo, wherever she wants to go. His eyes were bright with possibility. Say yes, Isabella. Say you'll run away with me. Yes, she kissed him. Yes to all of it. They spent the next week in a bubble, ignoring the media frenzy around Minho's ousting and the speculation about his mystery girlfriend. They made plans, silly and serious, about where they'd go first, what they'd do. Minho was different without the weight of CEO responsibilities. Lighter, more playful. He cooked her breakfast in his penthouse kitchen and burned the eggs. He took her to street markets and haggled over prices like he wasn't worth billions. He made her laugh until her sides hurt. But the bubble couldn't last forever. Isabella was leaving campus after a late study session when a black sedan pulled up beside her. Not Minho's car. The window rolled down and Park Jae-yeon sat in the back seat, immaculate in designer clothes, her expression cold. Get in, we need to talk. Every instinct screamed at Isabella to run. But curiosity and something like defiance made her open the door and slide inside. Jae-yeon studied her with clinical detachment. So you're the woman who destroyed a decade of planning. I didn't destroy anything. Minho made his own choice. Did he, or did you manipulate a lonely man with good sex and sob stories about your sick mother? Jayone's smile was sharp. I've done my research on you, Miss Kingsley. Nursing student, multiple jobs, desperate enough to sell your virginity at auction. You saw an opportunity and you took it. I can almost admire the hustle. Isabella's hands clenched. You don't know anything about me or what Min-ho and I have. I know it won't last. Men like Min-ho don't end up with women like you. Oh, he'll enjoy you for a while, maybe even a year or two, but eventually he'll miss his old life. The power, the respect, the empire he built, and he'll resent you for making him give it up. Jayone leaned forward. I'm offering you a way out, $5 million. Take it, disappear, let him rebuild what you destroyed. He'll be angry at first, but he'll get over it, and you'll be set for life. No. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Isabella reached for the door handle. I'm not leaving him, not for $5 million, not for any amount. So whatever game you're playing, find someone else to play it with. She got out of the car, her heart pounding. Jayone's voice followed her. He'll break your heart, Miss Kingsley. Men like him always do. Isabella didn't look back. When she told Min-ho about the encounter that night, his face went dark with fury. She approached you, alone, tried to pay you off. I handled it. That's not the point. She had no right. He stopped, took a breath, visibly controlling himself. I'm sorry. I thought ending the engagement would be enough. I didn't think she'd come after you directly. Why does she care? You said it was a business arrangement. It was for me, for her. He ran a hand through his hair. Jayone wanted the marriage, not because she loved me, but because she liked what it represented. Power, status, the merger of two dynasties. I thought she understood it was never going to happen, but apparently she was holding out hope. She said you'd resent me eventually, for making you give up your empire. Min-ho pulled her into his arms. Look at me. I will never, ever resent you. Losing the CEO position was the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me from a life I never really wanted, a role I only took because it was expected. You didn't take anything from me, Isabella. You gave me permission to finally breathe. She wanted to believe him, but Jayone's words had planted seeds of doubt that were hard to uproot. Over the next few weeks, those doubts grew. Not because of anything Min-ho did, he was attentive, loving, constantly reassuring her, but because everywhere she went, she was reminded of what he'd given up for her. News articles about Kang Industries' stock recovery under new leadership. Social media posts speculating about Min-ho's fall from grace. Whispered conversations at the hospital about the CEO who threw away an empire for some woman. And then her mother got worse. Isabella got the call at 2 a.m. Grace had collapsed, a complication from the tumor. She was in surgery. Isabella needed to come now. Min-ho drove her to the hospital, held her hand in the waiting room, didn't leave her side even when the surgery stretched into 6 hours. When the doctor finally emerged, exhausted but cautiously optimistic, Isabella collapsed into Min-ho's arms and sobbed. She's stable. The surgery was successful, but she's going to need months of recovery and intensive therapy. The doctor's expression was kind but serious, and even then, there are no guarantees. Min-ho's arms tightened around her. Whatever she needs, she'll have it. Money is no object. The doctor nodded and left. Isabella pulled back to look at Min-ho, this man who'd upended his entire life for her and was now paying for her mother's endless medical bills without complaint. This is too much, she whispered. I can't keep taking from you. You're not taking. I'm giving. There's a difference. But you've given up so much already. Your company, your reputation, your plans. And now you're drowning in my mother's medical expenses and my problems and... Isabella, he cupped her face, his eyes intense. Listen to me very carefully. I love you. That means your problems are my problems. Your mother is my family. There is no sacrifice too great, no expense too high. I would give up 1,000 companies to keep you. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Good, now let's go see your mother. Grace was unconscious but stable, machines beeping steadily around her. Isabella sat beside the bed and held her mother's hand, whispering prayers and promises. Min-ho stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, a silent support. She's going to be okay, he said quietly. I can feel it. Isabella wanted to believe him, but fear had taken root in her chest and wouldn't let go. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Isabella split her time between the hospital, her apartment, and Minho's penthouse. She barely slept, barely ate, running on coffee and adrenaline and Minho's constant support. He was there for everything, handling phone calls with doctors, arranging for the best specialists, making sure Grace had round-the-clock care. But the stress was taking its toll. Isabella could feel herself pulling away emotionally, building walls to protect herself from more pain. And Minho noticed. "Talk to me," he said one night as they lay in bed, her body tense despite his warmth beside her. "You're shutting me out." "I'm not." "You are. You barely look at me anymore. You haven't let me touch you in a week. Something's wrong and I need you to tell me what it is." Isabella stared at the ceiling, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of this, of us, of how much I need you." She turned to face him. "You've become my entire support system. You're paying for everything, handling everything, being everything I need. And that terrifies me because what happens if you leave? What happens when you wake up one day and realize this is too much, that I'm too much?" Minho's expression was pained. "Isabella." Jaeyeon was right. Men like you don't end up with women like me. Not permanently. This is a fantasy and eventually reality is going to crash down and you're going to realize you made a mistake and... He kissed her, hard and desperate, cutting off her spiral. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. "I'm going to marry you." The words hung in the air. Isabella's breath caught. "What?" "I'm going to marry you. I was planning to do this properly, but clearly you need to hear it now. I want you as my wife, Isabella, not my girlfriend, not my lover, my wife, my partner, my forever." He rolled out of bed, went to his jacket, and pulled out a small box. Isabella's heart stopped. He came back to the bed, opened the box. Inside was a ring, not as ostentatious as the one he'd shown her that first morning, but more beautiful. A simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond, elegant and timeless. "I bought this 2 weeks ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. But there is no right moment because every moment with you feels right." He took her hand. "Marry me, Isabella, not because you're scared I'll leave, not because you think you owe me, but because you love me and you want to build a life with me. Marry me and let me prove every single day that I chose you, I choose you, I will always choose you." She was crying now, full sobs that shook her whole body. "Minho, I know you're scared. I know this has been fast and chaotic and overwhelming, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You are it for me. The only woman I will ever love this completely. The only person I want beside me for the rest of my life." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Say yes, please say yes." "Yes," the word burst out of her. "Yes, I'll marry you, yes to everything." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. They made love with desperate intensity, Minho whispering promises against her skin, Isabella clinging to him like an anchor in a storm. When they finally collapsed together, exhausted and sated, he held her close. "We'll get married as soon as your mother is well enough to attend. I want her there. I want her to see me promise to love and protect her daughter for the rest of my life." Isabella pressed her face into his chest. "I'm still scared." "I know, but we'll face it together. That's what marriage means. You don't have to be strong alone anymore. You have me, always." She fell asleep engaged to a man she'd known for less than 3 months, wearing a ring that felt like both a promise and a lifeline. The next morning, Isabella woke to find Minho already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with soft eyes. "Morning, fiancé." She smiled despite her anxiety. "Morning. I have a surprise for you. Get dressed. We're going somewhere." "Minho, I need to get to the hospital." "I already called. Your mother had a good night. The nurses said she'll probably sleep until noon. We have time." He kissed her forehead. "Trust me." She did. She got dressed in jeans and a sweater, letting Minho lead her to his car. They drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city behind, until they pulled up to a beautiful house on the outskirts of Seoul. It was modern but warm, with large windows and a garden, nothing like Minho's sterile penthouse. "What is this?" Isabella asked. "Our home if you want it." He led her inside. The interior was stunning, open and airy with space for a family to grow. "I bought it last week. I was going to show you after I proposed properly, but plans change. He walked her through the rooms, pointing out features. Main bedroom with attached bath, guest rooms for when your mother visits, an office for you to study, a library because I remember you said you loved to read, and a nursery for when we're ready. Isabella's throat tightened. A nursery. I want children with you someday. Not right away whenever you're ready, but someday. He pulled her close. I want everything with you, Isabella. The marriage, the home, the family, the ordinary, beautiful life. This is me proving I'm serious. This is me building our future. She looked around the house at the life he was offering her and felt something in her chest unknot. He wasn't going anywhere. He was building something permanent with her. Real, tangible. It's perfect, she whispered. We can change anything you don't like. Redecorate, renovate. This is your home too. No, she turned in his arms. It's perfect exactly as it is. He smiled, kissed her softly. Then let's go tell your mother she's going to have a son-in-law. Grace was awake when they arrived at the hospital, weak but alert. Her eyes widened when she saw the ring on Isabella's finger. Mama, we're engaged, Isabella said, her voice thick with emotion. Grace looked at Minho, her expression serious. You asked my daughter to marry you. I did, and I'm asking for your blessing. Minho approached the bed, his demeanor respectful. I know I'm not what you imagined for Isabella. I know our relationship started unconventionally and has moved impossibly fast. But I love your daughter more than I knew it was possible to love another person. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never regrets saying yes. Grace studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, tears in her eyes. You have my blessing, both of you. She held out her hand and Minho took it gently. Take care of my baby girl, and when I'm better, I expect to be at that wedding. You'll be front and center, Minho promised. I wouldn't have it any other way. They spent the afternoon with Grace, talking about wedding plans and laughing despite the hospital setting. For the first time in weeks, Isabella felt light, hopeful, like maybe, despite everything, they really could have a happy ending. But that night, as Minho drove her back to the penthouse, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered. What, when? His expression went dark. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, his jaw tight. What's wrong? Isabella asked. That was my lawyer. Jaeyoun's family is suing me. They're claiming I breached a verbal contract to marry her, and they're demanding $3 billion in damages. Isabella's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try, and they have expensive lawyers and political connections. This could get ugly. He glanced at her, his expression torn. I'm sorry, I thought this was over. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I'm the one who got engaged to her in the first place, even if it was just on paper. I'm the one who let it drag on for years instead of ending it sooner. And now you're caught in the crossfire of my mistakes. We handle it together, Isabella said firmly, echoing his words from before. That's what you said, we face things together. He reached over and took her hand, brought it to his lips. I don't deserve you. Too bad, you're stuck with me now. That made him smile, just a little. But as they drove through Seoul's glittering streets, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The lawsuit hit the news the next morning. Isabella woke to her phone exploding with notifications, social media ablaze with speculation and judgment. The headlines were brutal. Fallen CEO faces billion-dollar lawsuit. Gold digger destroys Korean business dynasty. Mystery woman behind Kang Min-ho's downfall revealed. Someone had leaked her name, her photo, everything. Min-ho was already on the phone with his lawyers when she stumbled into the kitchen, his expression grim. He ended the call when he saw her face. They doxed you, he said, pulling her into his arms. I'm so sorry. We're working on getting it taken down, but the internet is forever. Your address, your school, your mother's hospital, it's all out there. Isabella's hands shook. How did they get all that? Jaeyoun's family has resources. Private investigators, hackers, people who specialize in destroying reputations. His jaw clenched. I'm moving you out of your apartment today. You're staying here where security can protect you, and I'm hiring a publicist to handle the media narrative. Min-ho, this is spiraling out of control. I know, but we're going to fight back. My lawyers are already building a countersuit for harassment and defamation. Jaeyoon's family thinks they can intimidate us into settling. They're wrong. Over the next week, the media frenzy intensified. Reporters camped outside Minho's building. Paparazzi followed Isabella to the hospital. Strangers on social media dissected every aspect of her life, called her vile names, sent death threats. Minho hired round-the-clock security, but it didn't stop the invasion of privacy, the constant sense of being watched and judged. Isabella tried to stay strong, but the pressure was crushing. She couldn't go to campus without being photographed, couldn't visit her mother without reporters shouting questions. Her inbox was flooded with hate mail. Someone created a website dedicated to destroying her reputation, filled with lies and manipulated photos. "They're winning," she said one night, curled up on Minho's couch, exhausted from another day of hiding. "They're making my life hell and there's nothing we can do about it." Minho sat beside her, pulled her into his lap. "They're not winning, they're desperate. This is what powerful families do when they're losing control. They lash out, try to destroy what they can't have, but it won't work." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know something they don't." He tilted her face up to look at him. "I know you're stronger than they think. I know we're stronger together than they are apart. And I know that in the end, love wins. It has to." She wanted to believe him, but doubt was a poison spreading through her veins, whispering that maybe everyone was right. Maybe she was destroying his life. Maybe the kindest thing she could do was walk away. The next day, Isabella got a call from her mother's doctor. Grace had taken a turn for the worse. The stress of the media attention, the constant reporters trying to interview her, had triggered complications. She was being moved to ICU. Isabella rushed to the hospital, Minho right behind her. Grace was unconscious, her vitals unstable. The doctor pulled Isabella aside, his expression grave. "Your mother's condition is deteriorating. The emotional stress isn't helping her recovery. I hate to say this, but you might want to consider limiting visitors, keeping the media away, reducing any sources of anxiety in her environment." "We've tried," Isabella said, tears streaming down her face. "But they won't leave her alone. They won't leave any of us alone." Minho's hand found hers, squeezed tight. "What if we left, went somewhere they can't follow?" The doctor considered. A change of environment could help. Somewhere quiet, private, where she can heal without stress, if you have the means. "We do." Minho was already pulling out his phone. "I'll arrange everything." Within 48 hours, Minho had organized the impossible. A private medical transport to an exclusive recovery facility in Jeju Island, far from Seoul's media circus. A team of doctors and nurses who signed NDAs. A private villa on the grounds where Isabella could stay close to her mother. Complete privacy and security. They left in the middle of the night to avoid cameras. Isabella sat in the medical transport beside her mother's stretcher, holding Grace's hand, while Minho coordinated everything from his phone. When they finally arrived at the facility, sunrise was painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The villa was beautiful, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, surrounded by gardens and peace. "It's perfect," Isabella whispered. "You both deserve peace." Minho wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We'll stay here as long as she needs. The lawsuit can wait. Everything can wait. Right now, the only thing that matters is your mother's recovery." For the first time in weeks, Isabella felt like she could breathe. Away from Seoul, away from the cameras and the judgment and the constant pressure, she could just be. Just focus on her mother without guilt or fear. Grace stabilized over the next few days. The quiet environment, the ocean air, the absence of stress worked miracles. She woke up more alert, started eating again, even smiled when Isabella told her where they were. "You didn't have to do all this," Grace said weakly. "Yes, we did." Isabella held her mother's hand. "You're the most important person in my life, Mama, and Minho knows that. He moved heaven and earth to give you this." "He's a good man." Grace's eyes found Minho, who was standing by the window giving them privacy. "You chose well, baby girl." "I really did." That night, as Isabella and Minho sat on the villa's terrace watching the sunset, he pulled her close. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "My lawyers called. Jaeyoon's family made an offer. If we settle out of court, give them $1 billion and agree to a public statement saying the engagement ended mutually, they'll drop the lawsuit and stop the media attacks. Isabella's stomach knotted. That's a lot of money. It's nothing. I have it. The question is whether we want to give them the satisfaction of backing down. What do you want to do? Honestly, I want to fight them. Take them to court, expose their harassment campaign, make them pay for what they put you through. His hand tightened on hers. But I also want this to be over. I want to marry you without this hanging over us. I want to start our life together without constantly looking over our shoulders. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves crash against the cliffs below. Then she turned to him. Pay them, settle, not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. We deserve to move forward without being dragged through the mud. Your money can buy us freedom from this nightmare, so buy it. Minho studied her face. You're sure? I'm sure. I don't care about the money. I care about you, about us, about building a life that isn't defined by lawsuits and revenge. She cupped his face. Let them have their victory. We'll have something better. We'll have each other. He kissed her, deep and thorough. Have I mentioned that I love you? Once or twice. Not nearly enough. He pulled her into his lap, held her close as the sun sank below the horizon. I'll call my lawyers tomorrow, get the settlement drawn up, and then we're done with all of this. No more Jayon, no more lawsuits, no more looking back, just forward, just us. The settlement was finalized within a week. $1 billion, a joint statement crafted by lawyers, and it was over. The media moved on to the next scandal. The hate mail slowed to a trickle. The reporters found other targets. Isabella and Minho stayed in Jeju for another month, watching Grace grow stronger every day. The doctors were amazed by her progress. The tumor was shrinking. Her mobility was improving. She was going to make it. One afternoon, as Grace napped in her room, Minho took Isabella's hand and led her down to the beach. It was deserted, just endless white sand and turquoise water. He stopped at the water's edge, turned to face her. Marry me, here's now. Isabella laughed. We're already engaged. I mean marry me, today, this week, as soon as we can get an efficient and your mother is strong enough to stand. His eyes were intense. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want a big wedding or society approval or any of the things that come with my old life. I just want you, as my wife, legally, permanently, mine. Her heart raced. You want to get married in Jeju? I want to get married wherever you are, but yes, here seems right. Private, beautiful, far from everyone who tried to tear us apart. He pulled her close. What do you say, want to become Mrs. Kang this week? Yes, she kissed him. Yes, let's do it. They planned the wedding in 3 days. It was small, intimate, perfect. Just Isabella, Minho, Grace in a wheelchair but smiling radiantly, an officiant, and 2 nurses as witnesses. They got married on the beach at sunset, barefoot in the sand, the ocean as their witness. Isabella wore a simple white dress Minho had ordered from Seoul. He wore linen pants and a white shirt, no tie, looking more relaxed and happy than she'd ever seen him. When the officiant asked if he took Isabella as his wife, Minho's voice was strong and sure. I do, forever. When it was Isabella's turn, she looked into his eyes and saw her entire future. I do, always. They exchanged rings, simple platinum bands engraved with their wedding date. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Minho kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Grace cried happy tears. The nurses applauded. The sun set in a blaze of gold and orange. And Isabella Kingsley became Isabella Kang, wife of the man who turned her world upside down and then put it back together better than before. That night, in their villa overlooking the ocean, Minho made love to his wife with a tenderness that made her cry. He whispered promises against her skin, told her all the ways he was going to love her for the rest of their lives. And when they finally fell asleep tangled together, both wearing wedding rings that caught the moonlight, Isabella felt a peace she'd never known. She was home, finally completely home. They stayed in Jeju for another 2 weeks, honeymooning in paradise while Grace continued to recover. But eventually, real life called. Grace was well enough to be discharged, and they all returned to Seoul together. The city felt different now, less hostile. The media had moved on, and Isabella had armor now, a wedding ring, and a husband who'd proven he'd fight the world for her. She wasn't the scared girl who'd sold herself at auction anymore. She was Mrs. Kang, and that meant something. Minho had been busy during their time in Jeju. He'd bought the house he'd shown her before, furnished it, made it ready for them. When they pulled up to the property, Grace gasped. "This is your home." "Our home," Minho corrected, helping Grace out of the car. "You'll stay with us until you're fully recovered. Then we'll help you find a place nearby if you want your own space. But for now, you're family. You live where we live." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You've done so much for us already." "Not nearly enough," Minho smiled. "You gave me the woman I love. I could never repay that." They settled into domestic life with surprising ease. Isabella returned to her studies, taking classes online so she could be home with her mother. Minho spent his days consulting for startups, investing in companies he believed in, finally doing work he was passionate about rather than obligated to. And Grace healed, growing stronger every day, her tumor shrinking until the doctors started using words like remission and miracle. Life was good, better than Isabella had ever imagined it could be. But she should have known it couldn't last. The first sign of trouble came 3 months after their wedding. Isabella had been feeling off for weeks, exhausted, nauseous, emotional. She'd attributed it to stress, to the whirlwind of the past few months. But when she missed her second period, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She took a pregnancy test in the bathroom of their home, her hands shaking. The 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly. Pregnant. She was pregnant. Isabella sat on the bathroom floor, the test clutched in her hand, trying to process. They'd been careful, mostly. There had been a few times, caught up in passion, when they hadn't used protection. Apparently that had been enough. She was going to have Minho's baby. Terror and joy warred in her chest. They'd talked about children, about wanting them someday. But this felt too soon. They'd only been married 3 months. She was still in school. Grace was still recovering. Was she ready for this? Was he? Minho found her 20 minutes later, still sitting on the bathroom floor. His expression shifted from concern to understanding when he saw what she was holding. "Isabella." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then a smile broke across his face, so bright and genuine it took her breath away. He dropped to his knees beside her, pulled her into his arms. "We're having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We're having a baby." "You're happy," she pulled back to look at his face. "Happy, I'm ecstatic, terrified, overwhelmed, but mostly ecstatic." He cupped her face, kissed her softly. "We're going to be parents." "I know it's too soon. I know we weren't planning this yet." Plans change, life happens, and sometimes the best things are the ones we didn't plan. He helped her to her feet, led her to their bedroom, sat her down on the bed. "How are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm nauseous and scared, and happy and scared again." He laughed, pulled her into his arms. "That's allowed. Being all those things at once is allowed." His hand found her stomach, rested there gently. "There's a baby in there, our baby, half you, half me. That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard." Isabella leaned into his warmth, let herself feel the joy underneath the fear. They were having a baby. It was fast and unplanned and absolutely terrifying. But it was also a miracle, a continuation of the impossible love story they'd been writing since the moment they met. "We need to tell my mother," she said. Grace's reaction was exactly what Isabella expected. Tears, laughter, overwhelming joy. She pulled Isabella into a gentle hug, then turned to Minho. "You're going to be a father. How does that feel?" "Like the greatest responsibility and privilege of my life," he smiled. "I hope the baby has Isabella's eyes, and her strength, and her kindness." "They'll be lucky to have you both." Grace wiped her tears. "When I was sick, when I thought I might not make it, my biggest fear was leaving Isabella alone. But now she has you, and soon she'll have a baby. My baby is going to be a mother. I get to be a grandmother." She started crying again, happy tears this time. God is so good. That night, as Isabella and Minho lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach, he spoke quietly into the darkness. "I want to be a good father, better than mine was." "You will be." How do you know? Because you love with your whole heart. Because you've proven you'll do anything to protect the people you care about. Because you're already worried about being good enough, which means you'll try your hardest. She rolled to face him. Our baby is going to be so loved, Minho, so incredibly loved. He kissed her forehead. Thank you. For what? For saying yes that first night, for not running when things got hard, for marrying me, for giving me everything I never knew I needed. His hand spread across her stomach. For this, for our family. Thank you for finding me, for refusing to let me go, for loving me even when I didn't think I deserved it. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, dreaming of the future they were building one impossible day at a time. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Isabella finished her semester with good grades despite the exhaustion and morning sickness. Minho was attentive to the point of being overbearing, constantly asking if she needed anything, researching pregnancy and childbirth until he knew more than her doctors. Grace blossomed in her recovery, excited about becoming a grandmother, already knitting tiny blankets and buying baby clothes. But at 5 months, when Isabella's bump was just starting to show, the peace shattered. She was at the hospital for a routine checkup when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Kang, a man's voice, professional, cold. Yes. This is Detective Park with Seoul Metro Police. We need you to come to the station. Your husband has been arrested. The world tilted. What? Why? He's been charged with embezzlement and fraud related to his time at Kang Industries. We have evidence he siphoned funds before his departure. He's being held pending investigation. That's impossible. Minho would never. Ma'am, please come to the station. He's asking for you. Isabella drove to the police station in a daze, her hands shaking on the wheel. This had to be a mistake. Minho hadn't embezzled anything. He'd left Kang Industries clean, his buyout negotiated legally. But when she arrived at the station and they let her see him, Minho's expression was grim. It's Jae-yeon, he said through the glass partition. Her family. This is revenge for the settlement. They've fabricated evidence, bribed auditors, created a paper trail that makes it look like I stole from the company before I left. But you didn't. You have proof you didn't. I do, but proving it will take time. My lawyers are already working on it, but this could drag on for months. And in the meantime, I'm stuck here. His jaw clenched. Isabella, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This is going to get ugly. They're going to freeze my assets while they investigate. You need to access the emergency funds I set up, the account under your name. There's enough to cover everything for at least a year. Your mother's treatment, the house, living expenses, legal fees. Minho, I don't care about money. I care about getting you out of here. I know, but I need you safe. You and the baby, that's all that matters. His hand pressed against the glass. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Promise me you won't let this stress hurt you or the baby. Tears streamed down her face. I promise, but you have to promise me something too. Promise me you're going to fight this. Promise me you're not going to let them destroy you. I promise. I'm going to fight with everything I have. And when I get out of here, we're leaving Korea. Taking your mother, going somewhere they can't touch us. And starting completely fresh. No more looking back. I'll wait for you, however long it takes. I know you will. You're the strongest person I know. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I love you, Isabella Kang, you and our baby. That's never going to change. I love you too, so much. The guard told her time was up. Isabella left the station feeling like her heart had been ripped out of her chest. She drove home in a fog, trying to process. Minho was in jail, accused of crimes he didn't commit. Their assets were frozen, and she was 5 months pregnant with their first child. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Grace was waiting when she got home, having heard the news. She pulled Isabella into her arms and let her cry. He's innocent, Mama. He didn't do what they're saying. I know, baby, and the truth will come out. We just have to be patient. I don't know if I can do this. Be strong. Handle everything alone. Not while I'm pregnant and scared and... You're not alone. You have me, and you're stronger than you think. Grace pulled back, looked Isabella in the eyes. Your husband needs you to hold things together while he fights this. Can you do that for him? Isabella wiped her tears, straightened her spine. Yes, I can do that. And she did. For the next 2 months, while Minho's lawyers built his defense and investigators dug into the fabricated evidence, Isabella held their life together. She managed their finances, dealt with the media resurgence, attended every court hearing with her head held high. She protected her growing baby bump from cameras, leaned on her mother for support, and visited Minho whenever they'd let her. He looked worse every time she saw him, thinner, more tired. The fight was taking its toll, but his eyes always lit up when he saw her, especially when her bump got big enough to be obvious through her clothes. "I hate that I'm missing this," he said during one visit, his eyes on her stomach. "Missing you growing our baby." "You'll be out soon. The lawyers said the evidence is falling apart. They can prove it was fabricated." "And if I'm not? If this drags on and I'm still here when you give birth? Then I'll bring the baby to meet you the moment they'll let me. And we'll get through it together, even if together means through glass." His expression crumbled. "You deserve so much better than this." "I have exactly what I deserve. You, a love worth fighting for, a family worth protecting." She pressed her hand against the glass. "We're going to win this, Minho. I know we are." She was right. 3 weeks later, Minho's lawyers produced evidence that destroyed the prosecution's case. Bank records showing the transactions happened after Minho left the company. Emails proving Jae-yoon's family had bribed auditors to falsify reports. Witness testimony from former employees who'd been pressured to lie. The case fell apart. Minho was released with all charges dropped, and Jae-yoon's family found themselves under investigation for fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Isabella was waiting outside the police station when Minho walked out, free. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly prominent, her body exhausted from carrying their child and the weight of 2 months of stress. He crossed to her in 3 strides, dropped to his knees in front of her, pressed his face against her swollen stomach. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I put you through this." "You didn't put me through anything. They did, and it's over now. You're free, we're together, that's all that matters." She ran her fingers through his hair. "Come home, Minho. Come home and meet your baby properly. They've been kicking like crazy waiting for you." He laughed through tears, pressed his hand to her belly. As if on cue, the baby kicked, hard enough that he felt it. His face transformed with wonder. "That's our baby. That's our baby." He stood, pulled her into his arms as gently as her pregnant belly would allow, and kissed her like he'd been starving for her. When they finally broke apart, both crying, he cupped her face. "We're leaving, tonight. I don't care about revenge or justice or making them pay. I just want to take my wife and our baby and your mother and disappear somewhere they can't find us. Can you do that? Can you leave everything behind and start over?" "I can do anything as long as I'm with you." They left Seoul that night, taking only what they could carry. Minho had already made arrangements, bought a house in New Zealand under a shell company, transferred funds to untraceable accounts. They flew first class to Auckland, Grace beside them, all 3 of them exhausted but hopeful. New Zealand was beautiful, green and peaceful, and so far from Korea it felt like a different world. The house Minho had bought was perfect, a sprawling property with an ocean view, surrounded by nature and quiet. They settled in quickly, all 3 of them desperate for the peace they'd been denied for so long. 2 weeks after they arrived, Isabella went into labor. The contractions started at 3 in the morning. Isabella woke Minho with a gasp, her hand clutching her stomach, and his eyes went wide with a mixture of terror and excitement. "It's time." His voice was higher than usual. "It's time." He moved with practiced efficiency, helping her to the car, grabbing the hospital bag they'd prepared weeks ago, calling ahead to the private hospital they'd selected. Grace insisted on coming despite the hour, and the 3 of them made the drive through pre-dawn darkness, Minho holding Isabella's hand so tight it almost hurt. The labor was long, 18 hours of pain and pushing, and Minho refusing to leave her side even when the doctors suggested he might want to take a break. He wiped her forehead, whispered encouragement, let her crush his hand during contractions. Grace sat in the corner, praying quietly, her eyes filled with happy tears. When their daughter finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Minho wept openly. The nurse placed the baby on Isabella's chest, this tiny perfect creature with a full head of dark hair and her father's eyes, and Isabella felt her heart expand in ways she didn't know were possible. "She's perfect," Minho whispered, his finger tracing their daughter's tiny hand. "She's absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" Isabella asked, exhausted but glowing. Minho looked at Grace, who'd approached the bed to see her granddaughter. "I'd like to name her Grace, after the woman who gave me my family, if that's okay with you both." Grace's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "You want to name her after me? You survived the impossible to be here for this moment. You raised the woman I love. You welcomed me into your family when I was a stranger. It would be an honor to give our daughter your name." Grace nodded, too emotional to speak. Isabella looked down at the baby in her arms, this tiny miracle born from an impossible love story. "Grace Minhee Kang," she said softly. "Welcome to the world, little one." The first few weeks with a newborn were chaos. Grace, the elder, moved in with them to help, and the house was filled with crying and laughter and the steep learning curve of new parenthood. Minho was surprisingly natural with the baby, changing diapers and doing middle-of-the-night feedings without complaint. He'd walk Grace around the house when she was fussy, singing Korean lullabies in his deep voice until she fell asleep. Isabella watched him one night, holding their daughter against his chest, swaying gently in the moonlight streaming through their bedroom window, and felt overwhelmed with love for this man who turned her world upside down and then made it beautiful. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her watching. "That I can't believe this is my life. That 9 months ago I was broke and desperate, and now I'm married to you with a perfect daughter in a house overlooking the ocean in New Zealand. It doesn't feel real." "It's real, I promise it's real." He crossed to the bed, laid baby Grace in her bassinet, then climbed in beside Isabella and pulled her close. "And it's only going to get better from here." "How can it get better than this?" "Watch me." He kissed her forehead. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you wake up every day grateful you said yes to me." "I'm already grateful." "Good, then my work here is done." He grinned, then his expression turned serious. "I mean it, Isabella. Everything we went through, all the pain and the fighting and the times I thought we might not make it was worth it for this. For you and Grace and our family. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Even the jail time." "Even that, because it led us here." His hand found hers, their wedding rings catching the moonlight. "I love you. More than I knew it was possible to love another person. You're everything." "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." "Don't be scared. I've got you. I've got all of us." He pulled her closer. "Forever, remember, you promised me forever." "Forever," she agreed, and fell asleep in his arms feeling safer than she ever had in her life. The months that followed were the happiest Isabella had ever known. Grace thrived, growing from a tiny newborn into a chubby, happy baby who smiled at everyone and had her father completely wrapped around her tiny finger. Minho had started a consulting firm in Auckland, helping startups navigate growth, and found he loved the work far more than running a corporate empire. Isabella finished her nursing degree online and started working part-time at a local clinic, loving the hands-on patient care. And Grace, the elder, against all odds, was in complete remission. The tumor was gone. She was healthy, vibrant, spending her days spoiling her granddaughter and tending the garden she'd planted around their property. One afternoon, 6 months after baby Grace was born, Minho came home with an expression Isabella had learned to recognize. Mischief mixed with excitement. "What did you do?" she asked, bouncing their daughter on her hip. "I bought something. Don't be mad." "Minho Kang, what did you buy?" He pulled a folder from his briefcase, handed it to her. Inside were property deeds for a small private island off the coast of Fiji. Isabella's jaw dropped. "You bought an island." "A small one, with a house already on it. I thought we could use a vacation home, somewhere completely private where no one can find us, where Grace can run on beaches and we can just be a family without any outside interference." He looked almost nervous. "Is it too much? It felt right when I signed the papers, but now I'm worried it's excessive." Isabella started laughing. She couldn't help it. This man who'd given up a billion-dollar empire was worried about being excessive with a vacation home purchase. "It's perfect," she said, kissing him. "You're ridiculous and extravagant, and I love you." His relief was palpable. "We can go next month, just the 4 of us. 2 weeks of nothing but ocean and sun and family time. The trip to Fiji was magical. The island was small but stunning, with white sand beaches and crystal-clear water. The house was modern and comfortable, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let the ocean breeze flow through. They spent 2 weeks swimming, playing with Grace on the beach, making love while her grandmother watched the baby, and talking about their dreams for the future. One night, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, baby Grace asleep in Minho's arms, he turned to Isabella with soft eyes. "I want more." "More what?" "More of this, more children, more life, more everything." He shifted Grace to one arm so he could take Isabella's hand. "I want to fill that house in Auckland with bobbies and laughter. I want to watch you be pregnant again, even though I know it's hard. I want to give Grace siblings. I want a big, chaotic, beautiful family." Isabella's heart swelled. "How many more?" "As many as you're willing to give me. 2 more, 3. I'll take whatever you want." "Let me finish nursing Grace first, then we'll talk about more bobbies." "Deal." He kissed her, soft and sweet. "Have I told you lately that you're the best thing that ever happened to me?" "Not in the last hour." "Unacceptable. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You changed my entire life. You made me a husband and a father. You gave me a family and a purpose and a love I didn't know existed. You're everything, Isabella, everything." She leaned her head on his shoulder, watched the sun sink into the ocean, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of love strong enough to weather any storm. They returned to Auckland refreshed and closer than ever. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Minho's business grew, but he kept his hours reasonable, always home for dinner and bedtime with Grace. Isabella loved her work at the clinic, found satisfaction in helping people heal. Grace the elder became the heart of their home, cooking Korean meals and teaching her granddaughter words in both English and Korean. When baby Grace was 18 months old, Isabella found out she was pregnant again. This time it was planned, wanted, celebrated without fear. Minho was ecstatic, already planning how to expand the nursery, talking to their daughter about being a big sister even though she was too young to understand. The second pregnancy was easier than the first. No media scrutiny, no lawsuits, no stress beyond the normal challenges of growing a human. Isabella worked until her 7th month, then stayed home to prepare for their second daughter's arrival. They named her Hope because she represented everything good that had come from their journey. Hope Minsi, Kang arrived 3 weeks early, tiny and fierce, and baby Grace was instantly smitten with her little sister. Watching Minho with 2 daughters was almost comical. He was completely outnumbered by women, surrounded by pink and dolls and tea parties, and he couldn't have been happier. He learned to braid hair, to paint tiny nails, to have elaborate conversations with stuffed animals. He was, without question, the most devoted father Isabella had ever seen. "You're going to spoil them," she said one afternoon, watching him build an elaborate pillow fort for Grace while Hope napped in his other arm. "Absolutely, that's my job. Spoil them rotten, protect them fiercely, and make sure they grow up knowing exactly how much they're loved." He looked up at her with a grin. "Besides, they're perfect. How can I not spoil perfection?" "They get it from their father. The perfection, I mean." "Liar, they get it from you." He stood, carefully transferring Hope to her bassinet, then crossed to Isabella and pulled her into his arms. "You gave me all of this family, this life, this happiness. I wake up every day wondering what I did to deserve you." "You paid $500,000 at an auction." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Best investment I ever made." "You're ridiculous." "Ridiculously in love with you." He kissed her deeply, then pulled back with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something. What if we went back to Seoul, not to live but to visit? Show the girls where they're from, let them see that part of their heritage." Isabella tensed. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." "It's been 3 years. The people who hurt us are dealing with their own legal problems. Jaeyoon's family lost everything in the fraud investigation. My old company is thriving under new leadership and has no interest in us. We could go back as tourists, visit the places that matter, and leave without anyone even knowing we were there." He cupped her face. "Our daughters are half Korean. I want them to know that part of themselves." And honestly, there's a part of me that wants to walk those streets again with you, but this time without fear. This time as the winner of our own story." Isabella considered. The thought of returning to Seoul still made her anxious, but Min-ho was right. Their daughters deserved to know their heritage. And maybe there was power in returning to the place where their story began, but this time whole and healed and happy. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's go back, but just for a week, and we stay completely under the radar." "Deal." They planned the trip for the following spring, when Grace was 3 and Hope was 1. Grace, the elder, chose to stay in Auckland, claiming the travel would be too much, but Isabella suspected she wanted to give them this journey as a family of 4. Seoul was both familiar and foreign. The city had changed in 3 years, new buildings rising where old ones had stood, different shops and restaurants. But the energy was the same, that vibrant pulse of a city constantly moving forward. Min-ho took them to the places that mattered. The hospital where Grace the elder had been treated, now a wing dedicated to cancer research thanks to a massive anonymous donation Min-ho had made. The university Isabella had attended, where she walked the campus with Hope in a carrier and Grace holding her hand, showing her daughters where their mother had studied. The coffee shop where Min-ho admitted he'd sat for hours after meeting Isabella, unable to work, unable to think about anything but her. But the most important stop was the hotel, the one where it had all started. They stood outside the building, Min-ho holding Grace, Isabella holding Hope, both of them staring up at the glittering facade. "You want to go in?" Min-ho asked quietly. "No, I just wanted to see it, to remember." She looked at him. "That night changed my entire life." "Mine too. I walked into that auction thinking I was buying one night with a beautiful woman. I walked out having met my soulmate. I just didn't know it yet." "When did you know?" "The morning after, when you left and I felt like someone had carved out my chest. I spent 3 weeks trying to convince myself I could forget you. Every single one of those weeks was a lie." He shifted Grace to his other hip. "I knew I was in love with you before I even admitted it to myself. My body knew. My soul knew. My brain just took a while to catch up. I fell for you that first night, too. I tried to tell myself it was just the intensity of the situation, the transaction, the forbidden nature of it. But the truth is, I looked at you and knew my life would never be the same. It hasn't been. No, it's been better, so much better." They stood there for a long moment, honoring the past while being fully present in their beautiful present. Then Grace started squirming, wanting to be put down, and Hope began to fuss, hungry and tired. The moment broke and they moved on, back to their hotel, back to their real life. The rest of the trip was wonderful. They visited palaces and markets and parks. They ate Korean food until they were stuffed. They took 100 photos of the girls in traditional hanboks, Grace posing seriously while Hope drooled on the expensive fabric. On their last night in Seoul, they hired a babysitter and went out to dinner, just the two of them. Min-ho took her to an exclusive restaurant with a view of the same city that had tried to tear them apart and had ultimately forged them stronger. "Any regrets?" he asked over wine and perfectly prepared beef. "Not a single one, you. Only that I didn't find you sooner, that we lost years we could have had together." He reached across the table, took her hand. "But I'm grateful for every single day we do have, every moment, every memory. You're the love of my life, Isabella, the only love of my life. You're mine too, my great love, my impossible love that became possible." He raised his glass. "To us, to everything we've overcome, to everything we've built, to the family waiting for us back at the hotel and the life we've created." She clinked her glass against his. "To us, always." They flew back to Auckland the next day, back to their home and their life and Grace the elder who'd missed them terribly. The trip had been healing in ways Isabella hadn't expected. They'd returned to the place where their story began and walked away from it again, but this time hand in hand, victorious, carrying the proof of their love and their daughters. The years that followed were beautifully ordinary. Min-ho's business continued to grow, but he never let it consume him the way Kang Industries had. Isabella worked part-time, balancing her career with motherhood in a way that felt sustainable and fulfilling. Their daughters grew from toddlers to little girls, Grace serious and thoughtful, Hope wild and fearless. When Grace was 7 and Hope was 5, Isabella got pregnant again. They hadn't been trying, but they weren't preventing either, open to whatever life brought them. When the test showed positive, Minho picked her up and spun her around like they were newlyweds. "Another baby," he said, his eyes bright with joy. "Another Kang. What if it's a boy this time? Then I'll have to learn about trucks and sports instead of dolls and tea parties. I'm adaptable." It was a boy. They named him James, after Isabella's father who'd passed before she ever met Minho. James had his father's intensity but his mother's gentle heart, and he completed their family in ways they hadn't known they needed. Grace the elder lived to see all 3 of her grandchildren grow, to celebrate their birthdays and holidays and everyday moments. She made it to Grace's 8th birthday, Hope's 6th, and James's 1st before her health began to decline again. The cancer came back, aggressive this time, resistant to treatment. The doctors gave her 6 months. She made it 8, determined to see one more Christmas with her family. She passed peacefully in January, surrounded by people who loved her, her daughter holding one hand and her son-in-law holding the other, her grandchildren sleeping upstairs. Her last words were, "Thank you for all of it, for this beautiful life." The grief was profound. Isabella mourned the loss of the woman who'd sacrificed everything for her, who'd lived long enough to see her daughter happy and settled and loved. Minho mourned the mother-in-law who'd welcomed him without judgment, who'd blessed his marriage and his family and his love. But there was also gratitude. Grace had lived to see miracles. She'd beaten cancer once, survived long enough to meet all her grandchildren, experienced years of joy she shouldn't have had. She'd gotten the ending she deserved, peaceful and surrounded by love. They buried her in New Zealand, in a cemetery with an ocean view, under a tree they planted in her memory. The girls cried, not fully understanding but sensing the loss. James was too young to remember her, and that broke Isabella's heart, but they would tell him stories. They would make sure he knew the grandmother who'd fought so hard to meet him. Life continued, as it does. The grief faded into bittersweet memory. The children grew. Minho's hair started to show silver at the temples, which Isabella thought made him even more handsome. Her body showed the marks of 3 pregnancies and a life well lived, and Minho loved every curve and scar. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Minho took Isabella back to Jeju Island, to the beach where they'd gotten married. They walked barefoot in the sand, hands linked, watching the sunset just as they had a decade before. 10 years, Isabella said. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like a lifetime. It's been both, the fastest and longest decade of my life. He stopped walking, turned to face her. I need you to know something. If I could go back knowing everything that would happen, all the pain and the fighting and the times I thought we might not survive it, I'd do it all again exactly the same. Because it led us here, to this moment, to our life, to our family. I would too, every single moment, even the scary ones, even the painful ones, because they made us who we are. I love who we are. He pulled her close. I love our life, our children, our home, our perfectly imperfect story, and I love you, more now than I did 10 years ago, more than I did yesterday, more than I can properly express with words. Show me instead. He did. He kissed her as the sun set over Jeju Island, kissed her like they were young and new and just discovering each other. Kissed her like they had all the time in the world and no time at all. Kissed her like she was everything, because she was. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Isabella rested her forehead against his. Here's to the next 10 years, she said. And the 10 after that, and all the 10s that follow, he smiled. I'm planning on forever, remember. Forever sounds perfect. They walked back to their hotel as darkness fell, 2 people who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances and built something beautiful from the ashes. Their story had started with a transaction, with desperation and money and a night that should have been meaningless. Instead, it became everything. Isabella Kingsley had walked into an auction to save her mother's life and walked out having found her soulmate. Kang Min-ho had bought one night with a stranger and gained a lifetime with the love of his life. They'd survived lawsuits and jail and media circuses and grief. They'd built a family, created a home, found peace in a world that had tried to tear them apart. And through it all, They'd loved each other with a fierce, unbreakable devotion that proved some things really were meant to be. Some connections really were worth fighting for. Some love stories really did get their happy ending. Theirs did. 10 years after a desperate woman sold her virginity at an auction and a lonely billionaire paid $500,000 for one night, they were still together, still in love, still choosing each other every single day. And they would continue choosing each other for all the days to come, through whatever challenges and joys the future held, because that's what forever meant. That's what true love meant. And their love, forged in fire and tested by every possible storm, was as true as love could be.